Hi, everybody. Oh gosh, I just did this and I forgot to turn on the, let's see, where is this? The audio. So you didn't hear it. So let's go back. I hope we'll get it right on this one.
By each owner. So, in a very simple way to explain it, if you founded a company with five of your
Oh,
friends and you were going to split it up equally, you would found an LLC or a C corp.
okay. He's explaining the Federal Reserve. But actually, I wanted to go back a little bit more. Shoot.
On. And when you go above Congress, insider trading, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Now, there's obviously no way to verify this, but if you ask me what I think is going on, I make a pretty educated guess that if you understood the way the cap table at the Federal Reserve actually works, since you'll never, ever, ever be able to verify who owns what. Okay. You'll be able to verify who has ownership stake in the Federal Reserve, but you'll never be able to verify what percentage they own in the Federal Reserve. Brilliant. These people are brilliant, man. I mean, no one ever.
They are not brilliant. They're stupid. Okay, they do have a couple of smart people working for them. I've been around the IMF and the Federal Reserve people. They work upstairs from where I'm working now since 2009 that I've been back in Washington, D.C. I worked at the International Monetary Fund from 2009 to 2015. I was bullied and targeted in hate crimes for representing white privileged American. Um, I mean, they went to town on me. First, the wives of the IMF Family Association. Then I was in the Institute for Capacity Development, which is like the IMF university, they call it. Basically, what that department does is train treasury departments of countries around the world how to do macroeconomic manipulations and their central banks to produce the same Ponzi scheme here that Jesse Merl is explaining. And what the and this is where it gets into my big beef with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, because since the 90s, they like the World Bank, they've been doing this like development a la American Dream with shopping malls and McDonald's and Trump Towers everywhere and ivory luxury living and this Orwellian dystopian world and concentration of wealth into urban centers and concentration of wealth into the hands of the oligarchs. And it's being done thanks to this system of the banking, because what they'll do, they have what they call financial inclusion. So, and this, when my ex-husband, he was the head of the directory um, of the Treasury Department of Banco Ganadero in Colombia. Uh, when we were there, and this is precisely the Banco Santander, el BBVA, which is BBVA, Banco Bilbao, excuse me, Vizcaya Argentaria. Um, which are the two Spanish multinational banks. Citibank basically said, oh, you guys speak Spanish, so you take Latin America. We're going for Asia and Africa. I mean, and they did split it up, I guess, with the English. So anyway, but the Spaniards, they got South America, and Banco Santander and BBVA, they were in such competition to be who is going to be the first. It was all about being first to get into the countries that they didn't really look very well at what they were buying, and they ended up with some not so pleasant surprises. So anyway, that's the you know, the background there, and that what they were doing was financial inclusion. Now, what I saw when I was at the IMF and reading through the reports, I saw that, for example, being done in Turkey. You saw the financial inclusion, and there was some positive. I think that was the report about 2010. See, this was Mark Lewis, who was at Institute for Capacity Development, who was the res rep on that one. So, these are the reports. I'm reading the same reports as these guys. Okay? They all went to Harvard, PhD, six figure salaries and stuff like that. So, I mean, they should know better. They can't say they did. They're not seeing the same things that I'm seeing. Um, so anyway, you are having this financial inclusion, and that means that everybody stop putting the money that you earn under your mattress because it might catch fire. So better put it in a bank. We can keep it safe. Nobody's going to come and steal it. It won't burn. And if you need to buy something, say that you don't have the cash for, well, then you can come and you can get a loan. And I agree, a banking system, this is a very necessary. And so on that part of financial inclusion, I'm all on board with them that's what, to develop an economy. You do want a banking system that everything, it's not barter or just, cash, cash, cash amongst people. Because if you do want business development, you do need some sort of financial system. I'm not against stock markets either. So, this is not some communist system. However, you need to have them above board and transparent. So, you want your financial inclusion, but what's happening is they've been taking that money, all of these multinational banks, and then putting it into stock markets and different financial markets or risky businesses and different things. I mean, if you look at the capital venturists, you have the techie bubbles, boom and bust, because they're all throwing good money after bad. And I mean, I've been looking for the past 20 years for money for my global expats for the IT platform. So I've been in that IT bubble stuff. So I see what they're investing in. I know I've been through whole kit and caboodle, every single one who's investing in this stuff from Silicon Valley over to Europe. um, but I'm a trad wife also. It's a little bit more than just, oh, you're a trad wife and you've never, you're not like Erica Kirk, who can just come in and waltz in after being a trad wife and be the CEO of this multinational or multi-million dollar company. Um, a little snot-nosed brat who understands nothing about anything. Um, oh, this doesn't surprise anybody, but an old lady like me, no, 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 no. See the double standards? And this is not fair trade. I mean, this whole stuff, if you go in to all of my stuff on economics, we need Adam Smith, Invisible Hand, uh, economic systems, where we have bakers, um, how shall I, shoemakers, um, you know, people who make vacuums that work, things like that. Instead of Bernard Mandevillian, who said, oh, yeah, but prostitutes, drug addicts, drug pushers, soldiers, they produce economies too. Granted, you just, the, the Mandevillian is not sustainable, whereas your Adam Smith is sustainable as long as you have moral Christian value. And I'm not talking about the backstabbing witchery and then waving your Bible and saying what a good Christian you are. I'm talking about teaching people, treating people with respect, and being above board and not trying to con people and being dishonest. And I'm talking about, the written word instead of what we all see. Because, excuse me, the Christian conservatives, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, all TPUSA, Erica Kirk, everybody, not given a very good face to what Christian conservative values are about. This is precisely why I could never stand the hypocrisy. And it didn't, whether it be my mom with her Catholicism and all that crap, or the Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus, whatever. It doesn't matter. That, that hypocrisy, if you read the Torah, Quran, or Bible, it's, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But, yeah. So anyway, let's continue.
Accuse people who have literally taken over the world of being dumb, right? So the cap table, and for those of you who don't know what that means, believe me, there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's no reason you should know it. If you don't know what a cap table is, there's no reason you should have known it. No shame, okay? Capitalization table just means it is essentially a document or whatever that breaks down the number of shares owned by each owner. So in a very simple way to explain it, if you founded a company with 5 of your friends and you were going to split it up equally, you would found an LLC or a C Corp or S Corp or whatever, right? The way that it's irrelevant. You would create 10 million shares and each of you would own 2 million shares of that company, which is 20% because there's 5 of you, right? And so shares equal amount of ownership and percentage of ownership. Okay. Now the Federal Reserve is a private organization. Okay. They keep it public kind of because they want to appear like they are some kind of public-ish organization when in reality, the Federal Reserve is a bank that is completely private. And when the U.S. government takes money from them, these are in the form of loans. Okay. So the cap table for the Federal Reserve has something, I can't remember the exact number, but you're talking about like between 1,500 and 2,000 member banks. Okay. And each of those banks has a piece of ownership in the Federal Reserve. But you don't really know how much anyone owns. And I mean, like, no one publicly knows what their percentages is. And usually you're talking about in almost every case, you're talking about fractions of a percent, right? Like fractions of percentage. But to the public, you just got about 1,800 names. Now, why do you think that they would hide who owns what? You know what I mean? Because if you know the story of how the Federal Reserve was created, it was done in secret by, if I remember correctly, 7 magnate bankers or whatever. Okay. So if I were going to guess, and I am going to guess right now, I would guess that those families probably have something around, somewhere around each like a 10 to 15% non-dilutable position, not all 7, but like, Rothschild, Rockefellers, like the big boys. I would bet that their position never gets diluted. And so when there are new member banks and everyone else gets diluted, which just means that their shares are now worth a smaller percentage, those guys, non-dilutable. It probably stays the same no matter what. So it was diluted to a certain percentage, which it can never go beyond. So if they started at 20, they could never get diluted beyond 12, something like that, right? I am getting in the weeds. Bottom line is they own the Federal Reserve. Yeah. They own the Federal Reserve.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, as I say, that's kind of a lay person's explanation of it. So let's listen to, here.
Banks are not financial intermediaries. Banks create money out of nothing. But it's a Ponzi scheme because it works only as long as the banks continue to create more credit. The Act of Parliament establishing the Bank of England, it said the purpose is to make war.
Wait, the head of the German central bank and the head of the American central bank were run by brothers during a war between the US and Germany?
Tucker Carlson recently published an interview with Dr. Richard Werner, a renowned economist and author of Princes of the Yen. At the time of this recording, the nearly 3-hour interview already has over 750,000 views, and it's easy to see why. Werner walks Carlson through the origins of banking, the evils of the Fed, the mechanisms of our credit-based monetary system, and the shocking connection between central banks and war. So today we're bringing you 3 powerful clips from that conversation and breaking down what they reveal about the depths of our broken monetary system. And it's
okay. Yeah, I do advise everybody to listen to the entire interview, but I saw this and I was like, okay, this is going to break it down. Because people are not going to listen to 3 hours all the time. So, but this is a good breakdown.
Its downstream effects on society, culture, and politics. When I first started going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, the thing that truly shocked me the most wasn't the inflation or the bailouts. It was learning that our entire system of central banking and money creation is deeply tied to war. Most people never make that connection, and that's why they don't see the need for something like Bitcoin. My goal in this video is to lay out just how broken the system really is, so that you can see why fixing the money might actually help fix nearly everything else. Before we get to the connection between money and war, we need to start with something even more fundamental and more commonly misunderstood. Because the truth is, most people have no idea where money actually comes from. Most believe that banks simply take deposits and lend them out, but that's not what fuels the system. As Dr. Werner explains in his first clip, the entire economy runs on something far more fragile and far more...
See, as I said, that's what I'm advocating. We need to go back to the basics of banking and what it's all about. So let's go.
Shocking. Credit created out of thin air.
So the solution to all this and why economics has made no progress is bank credit. Now, bank credit, and actually you should say fully bank credit creation. This is a concept that's been a taboo or a secret in economics. If you look into it, you realize there's 3 theories of banking. The second theory is slightly older. That was dominant until the 1960s, so-called fractional reserve theory. And you may have heard this fractional reserve banking. What is that? Well, this theory says, and this part is similar, each bank is a financial intermediary. It just collects deposits and then does the analysis, lends out the money. But in aggregate, as banks interact, there's money creation. Oh, and that's where students' ears should have pricked up. Money creation. They even talk about a money multiplier. What? That's the second theory. Now there's a third theory. And that one had been made out to be a wacky conspiracy theory.
Oh.
But it is the one that was more or less quite widely known until about a century ago. And that's the credit creation theory of banking. And this one says, banks are not financial intermediaries. Banks are special. They have a unique power that no other player in the economy has, and that is the power to create money. When you get a loan, no money is transferred to your, it's transferred away from anywhere else, and you just credited new money out of nothing that is not transferred away anywhere inside or outside the bank, which seems, quite sort of extreme.
Like magic.
In fact, one uses, the convention is to use Latin for this. The money is created ex nihilo, out of nothing. So when it did the empirical test, the conclusion was the financial intermediation theory is rejected and the fractional reserve theory is rejected. Banks create money out of nothing. By the way, you can look it up. It's the most downloaded paper of all Elsevier publications called, and it's open access. So can banks individually create money out of nothing?
Any bank. Just to be clear, not just central banks.
Any bank. In fact, that's the whole point. We're talking about normal banks. With central banks, it wouldn't be a surprise.
But the Bank of Omaha.
Yes, any bank creates money. When you take out a loan, the money that you're given as the borrower didn't previously exist. It is net new purchasing power that's being created and added to the money supply. And that's how the system works. Now, to understand how the system works is a precondition for having good economic analysis and good policy recommendations. And that explains for over 100 years, macroeconomics has made no progress. They have no banks in there. They have no bank credit creation in there.
This is the core mechanism of fiat money. Banks don't lend your savings. They create new money out of thin air when they issue loans. That means the money in your bank account was likely created as someone else's debt. And your mortgage, your student loan, those dollars didn't exist until you signed on the dotted line. This system has massive implications. For one, inflation is baked in, because money is always expanding through new debt issuance. 2, crashes become inevitable, because if credit stops growing, the system seizes, and the money stops flowing. 3, the economy is hostage to debt. Money supply and growth are entirely dependent on banks issuing more credit. And this ends up affecting everything, your rent, your groceries, your wages, because when money is created through loans, someone always owes. And if that debt isn't paid back today, it's carried forward to the next generation. This is a system built not on savings, but on leverage. And as we'll see in the next clip, that leverage doesn't just affect individuals. It warps entire markets.
So actually, the banks are creating a lot of money and they're pumping it into the real estate market. And now you don't have to have studied economics to tell me what's going to happen with real estate prices.
What's going to happen is what's happening in the United States, where real estate becomes unaffordable.
Exactly. It's not rocket science. Real estate prices are pushed up. This is true for all assets. So when banks lend a lot for financial assets, the prices, the values of these financial assets will be pushed up. But it's a Ponzi scheme because it works only as long as the banks continue to create more credit for others to join the game and buy these assets. And the moment the music stops, the banks don't increase credit for asset purchases, then asset prices won't rise anymore. Because with this, when I discovered this, I found the causal factor behind the land price rises. And I tested it, and it's true. It's the real estate lending explains the real estate price movement very nicely. And that's, of course, that has many consequences.
So big picture, I think please correct me, but I think what you're saying is that most of us assume prices are set by markets, which is a product of supply and demand. A lot of people want something, it becomes a lot more valuable, relative to its abundance. You're saying that actually prices are determined by banks.
Yes, and actually it's more than that, because your question implies you're still, we're all influenced by what's mainstream, and your question is about prices. And then, of course, the price of money, the interest rate, and that is what we're being taught. Think about prices. It's all about prices, the economy, equilibrium, markets, demand, supply, prices. Quantities are much more important. And that's because there's no equilibrium. That's one of these other ridiculous assumptions. They just assume equilibrium. There's never been any evidence of any equilibrium. So markets are rationed. Ration markets are determined by the short side principle. Whichever quantity of demand and supply is smaller, that's the common denominator. That determines outcomes. It's quantities. And what's the most important quantity in the whole system? The quantity of money. And where does it come from? Created by banks.
So what happens when all this bank-created money gets funneled into real estate and financial assets? Prices go vertical. Not because of real demand, but because of easy credit. This is how we get housing and stock market bubbles and student debt crises. Because when banks issue credit into these markets, prices inflate far beyond their utility value. And it creates a dangerous illusion that these assets are going up in value when really they're just absorbing newly created money.
So you see why, for example, educational systems, nobody needs all of these goddamn MBAs. We see this with Erica Kirk. She's got this, MBA. She says it's an international. The dumb bimbo idiots who have MBAs coming out of their wazoozy. It's not even funny. So it's all this. There are so many schools and universities and colleges, and they keep and more online, and get a diploma, get more diplomas, more money into that system. The same with real estate markets. First, the urban centers, everybody live in urban centers. You're getting more and more and more. I talk about this all the time on in my YouTube and the deep state. And unfortunately, for example, the farmland. In fact, I saw Bill Gates. This was years ago, so this may have changed a bit. But Bill Gates was buying up farmland all over the place, and the farmland was being concentrated, was being lost by the individual farmers and concentrated into the hands of these corporations and oligarchs. So that I forget and then the financial markets. I keep on going every time I go to the bank to do my deposit or take some money out. I ask the kids, I say, okay, so what's the savings account paying these days? A straight savings account. It's like, if I have 25,000 just put in, I'm like, no, just what no, nothing, not even 1%. I'm like, yeah, that's bullshit. So I explained to them. I said, you know what? When I was working in the 1980s, money markets, you can liquidate from one day to another. Savings accounts, you can pretty much, I think you can pull out the same day. You didn't even have to liquidate it. You could move it directly. So this is almost as liquid as a money market. So my money market was paying around 5%. Yeah, around there. Like it would fluctuate. I think it would go up a bit. And T-bills, treasury bills were paying 10%. So that was kind of your base. Your savings account, that's your money is like very safe there. That's insured by the federal government. So yeah, okay, in principle, let's just believe that was really insured. So that's insured, or your treasury bonds. Those were like considered safe, as I say. So that's your although treasury bonds you can't liquidate from one day to another. That's your baseline. now, let's see. Yeah, the savings account pay absolutely nothing. I really don't know what T-bonds. Let's see what Treasury bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds are playing. Bonds. Okay, what are they yielding? Okay, 30-year. Where are you? 3 month is 3 point. Oh my God! See, as I said, it was 10%. Short term is 3.6. Long term is only 4.7. You see what I'm saying? So what that implies is that everybody, the incentive, everybody's been pushing, get into the hedge fund. You had mutual funds, get into the stock market, get into the stock market. So you're not, as I say, in your savings account, if you want to go, I don't know, you've been saving up to buy a car or something like that. It's just not worth it. You're not making any money there. So you're going to be in the incentive is to put your money in the stock market, mutual funds, and that all of the pension funds, everybody's been sticking their money there. So of course, the bigger your bubble, the bigger it's gonna pop. Up goes the weasel. Sorry.
It also explains why housing has become increasingly unaffordable and infeasible for current generations. It's not just zoning laws and foreign buyers. It's the sheer volume of credit flooding into real estate, bidding up prices, and locking out ordinary hardworking people. But remember, the system only works as long as the credit expands. Once that slows or reverses, the whole thing collapses. Which is why every new administration just kicks the can further down the road. As Werner pointed out, economists often focus on prices, inflation, deflation, and bubbles. But the real driver is quantity. It's the sheer
Yeah. So if everybody remembers, after the 2008 collapse, and there was a whole big to-do that the American government, through the Treasury Department, was going to inject through the central banks $1 trillion into the banking system. And Obama at least was up in arms saying, wait a second, we're a capitalist system. We can't do that. They did it, and it was supposed to be temporary. Oh no, it became permanent. And I'm not sure where we are right now. Is it 6, 7? I forget, but they just keep on sticking more and more and more money in there. Slipping it through.
Quantity of credit, where it flows, how fast it expands, and who gets access to it, that determines the shape of the economy. That's why a system based on credit creation is inherently unstable. It constantly swings between euphoria and collapse. It needs constant fuel, and that fuel is debt. So what kind of system doesn't rely on ever-expanding credit to survive? That's right, Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't care about credit. It doesn't care about monetary policy. It doesn't need a central bank or a bailout committee. It has no adjustable levers, only rules. And the most important rule is this. There will only...
Okay, so I'm going to listen with an open mind here to this explanation of Bitcoin, because I still don't believe this, because that it's not a Ponzi scheme, because any kind of the problem that I have with the American dollar, let's just call it, we'll not talk about the euro, we'll not talk about the any other, the American dollar is the I mean, it's any currency that is issued by the government, by a sovereign state. And only sovereign states can issue currency. And this goes back in history, and even, I believe it's in the Constitution. I believe I may be mistaken in there, because we did have a problem, and that was exactly, we didn't have a unified currency at the beginning. But only the U.S. government can issue legal tender. I know that someplace. And the reason for that is, imagine, this is the problem that we had before, at the beginning, each different state had its own currency. This is the problem that you had in Europe. Spain had its currency, France had its currency. I remember we were living in Europe. We were constantly going up and down, and I'm with the Belgian franc, the French franc, or the Spanish peseta. And I was like, thank you, Lord, when they brought in the euro, because I didn't have, you had your fluctuation. Every time I crossed the border, first I had to have, some cash. In those days, you did. Throughout my lifetime, you use less and less cash. So we've always been, we've been into digital currency for a long, long, long time. But so I was like, oh, thank you when they brought in the euro. Now we had the same issue in the United States with our currencies, and that's when they brought in the dollar. I don't know exactly when that is. I would have to look that up. So they brought in the dollar, so we had only one currency, and that is backed. I am a big proponent. What we need to do is bring back the gold standard, because and this goes back to Roman times and coinage. I mean, it was death penalty if you screwed around with the Roman coins or the whatever king issued the coins, but they were very, no, this is a gold coin and this is worth so much, because people would melt it down, add stuff in, and of course, you get let's just say a gold coin worth $100, you melt it down, you make 2 coins, of course, now you got $200. That's why you wanted to make sure the integrity of your coinage, because back in the old days you were not going to have paper money that would burn too easily. So yeah, you had gold coins. And the thing is it's like, why gold? Why gold? Precious metals. Now the thing with gold, silver is okay, but the thing with gold is that it doesn't deteriorate. It's going to always, you have a piece of gold, it's going to still maintain, it's going to have its same properties 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now. If you got an apple, that's going to feed you today, but 2,000 years from now, it's not going to exist, even a year from now. So it is and it does have certain, in terms of science and our infrastructures, it is a very, very important metal. So, and the rarer that it is, and the more, how shall I say, valuable and necessary in a society, the better it's going to maintain. That is why gold always has been the base of monetary systems in any kind of economy, that where it's not barter, and that you do have some sort of fiat money. And that's why this is what I'm having the problem with Bitcoin. What's behind Bitcoin? Who's behind Bitcoin? Because this is really being used for money laundering. It's very easy to be used for money laundering. It's in the control of somebody's hands. They're like, well, wait a second, there are rules and stuff. It's like, but if tomorrow I go and I say, I want all of my money, what are you going to give me? You see what I'm saying? If I go to a bank and I say, no, I want my gold. I mean, I want my dollars, but behind my dollars, if this was if we were under a gold standard, my dollar, I go I should be able to go to the U.S. Treasury Department. I get my dollar from my bank. I go to the U.S. Treasury Department and I say, I want the equivalent in gold. And if, in theory, if we have a gold standard, that's what they're supposed to give me. We'll just say the theory is true. But in theory, that's what it is. So that's why I'm okay, because I got a piece of paper here that I'm giving somebody and saying, here, this is worth $1. Why do they believe it's worth $1 or $10 or $20 or whatever? Why do they believe that? It's a piece of paper. They believe it because it's printed and it says the US government is backing the value of this dollar. Now, who is backing the value of Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrency you got out there? This is why I'm like, I want to know that if I come to you and I say tomorrow, I want my money, you're going to say, oh, okay. Oh, no, but it's in this account. Well, you're no different than the banks then.
Only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That fixed supply is everything. It means the quantity of Bitcoin is not a variable. It's a constant. That removes the most dangerous weapon in fiat. The ability...
But everybody's coming up with all sorts of different Bitcoins and cryptocurrency. This is why it's like, oh, well, no, there's one fixed amount until you open up another one. And who's opening this up? And what are they offering as collateral? I can say tomorrow as well, get a bunch of techie gurus. We're going to set up a thing and say, oh, we've got 100 billion Bitcoin dollars. You just created that out of air. What are you creating it out of? You see my problem with this Bitcoin?
To inflate supply and distort value. When fiat money expands and contracts based on who's in charge and what they want to fund, Bitcoin simply ticks forward, block by block. Programmatic, predictable, and unbiased. No political agenda, no housing subsidies, no credit booms or busts, just sound money with transparent issuance and incorruptible accounting. And that's why high net worth individuals and serious investors are waking up to this.
Sound money. This is where I'm like, where is your sound money? What's your tangible asset behind this? It's double talk here.
The truth. Bitcoin isn't a speculation or a mere hedge. It's a lifeboat away from a system built on credit, distortion, and collapse. And so if you're managing significant wealth and trying to navigate this shift, don't do it alone. Swan Private gives you direct access to Bitcoin advisors, enhanced custody solutions, and the infrastructure to protect your capital through this monetary transformation. Visit swan.com/private and connect with a member of the team today.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I'm definitely not exactly doing an advertisement for these people.
About shaping Bitcoin's role in America's future, come to BTC in DC, the policy-focused Bitcoin event bringing together builders, thinkers, and lawmakers. BTC in DC will be at the historic Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., September 30th to October 1st, and you don't want to miss it. Visit btcindc.com and use promo code SWAN for 10% off tickets. And finally, a quick shout out.
It's already over.
To Merl, the world's largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner, for supporting this show and for helping make Bitcoin the world's most decentralized and secure monetary network. And now we reach the deepest layer of this discussion, the one almost nobody talks about and very few understand. Why were central banks created in the first place? According to Werner, their origin story isn't about stability. It's about war.
Can I ask you, since you brought up the First World War, and we're on the cusp of a war right now, potentially a global war, what is the view of war by the banks? Like, what do the banks think of it? You've described the banks as the single greatest control mechanism of human behavior in a society, I think.
Particularly the central banks, because they have the
bigger the bank, the more the power, but their power extends beyond just like their relationships with other banks. Their power determines a lot of what happens in your country. Yeah. And they're not under the control of voters, right? So it's an extra democratic institution, which happens to be the most powerful, which is like crazy. I'd love to know how that happened. But how do they feel about war?
Well, central banking and warfare are very closely linked.
They love it.
As I said, I mean, the modern major bank, the first modern major bank and central bank was the Bank of England, of course. And in the very act of parliament, the law founding it, it says this institution and mechanism because they didn't want resistance. They didn't mention Bank of England. What we're doing here is establishing the Bank of England. They kept that secret. We're doing a new mechanism by these investors to raise and lend a lot of money to the government, namely by establishing a company will be allowed to.
See, we're doing this new mechanism to raise and lend a lot of money to the government. These Bitcoin guys, they're doing the same thing. But going directly to the consumer.
Establish a company, that's the Bank of England. In order for what? In order to wage war. It was in order to make war. So they're closely linked. And of course, if you look at
its founding document, it says that.
Exactly, the Act of Parliament establishing the Bank of England, it said the purpose is to make war. Do you know why the Federal Reserve was established? And there was a rush to establish it for 1914.
The year the First World War started.
Exactly.
Destroyed Europe. Yeah.
And again, it was done with subterfuge. I mean, they're gathering everyone on the 23rd of December, 1913, when nobody was there. And then also introducing income tax. That's also at the Bank of England. It was established together in the same act, calling for establishing new taxes. Why? Because when you have these central banks, privately owned central banks established, it's basically this trick where these entrepreneurs persuade the government, oh, you don't want to issue money. We'll issue money for you. What? That's what they're essentially saying without being so direct about it. But that's what they want to persuade governments to give up the power to create money themselves. We'll do it for you. And we'll lend you the money. And henceforth, well, how do we get our money back? Well, we love to lend to the government because you can raise taxes. And that's why taxes were introduced. The federal income tax didn't exist before the creation of the Fed. It's also created in 1940.
You couldn't have one without the other.
Well, whenever central banks created, they introduced new taxes, one way or another. Yes.
The central bank of the United States, the Fed, was created right before the war. I mean,
yes,
right before the war,
exactly.
2 months before the war. What was the role of the central banks during that war? The most important war in the last 1,000 years.
Yeah. Well, it was really at the pinnacle of the war economy. There's no doubt about that. It's very clear. And the same is true, of course, for the other side. And now from 1917, the US and Germany were at war, which is very sad. A lot of Americans are of German descent, and Germans didn't really want to be at war with Germany, but that's what happened. So we've got these two countries at war, sad, the soldiers dying in the trenches, and their economies organized as war economies. At the pinnacle of the war economies are the central banks. So who were the key players in the German central bank, the Reichsbank, which was 100% privately owned? Well, was somebody called Max Warburg, or Max Warburg, you might say in English. And who was at the pinnacle, in fact, was a founder of the Federal Reserve, and who was the key person there? It was somebody called Paul Warburg, his brother. But of course, the soldiers have to kill each other, and these two countries are at war.
Wait. The head of the German central bank and the head of the American central bank were run by brothers during a war between the U.S. and Germany?
Yes. Now, I have to qualify. They weren't the formal governors, but they were the key people.
Just think about that for a minute. The central banks funding World War I were guided by brothers, one on each side of the conflict. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy history. Central banks, for the first time ever, gave governments unlimited war chests. No need to raise taxes or sell war bonds to citizens. Just issue bonds, sell them to your central bank, and let inflation do the rest. This is precisely why wars became longer, more drawn out, and vastly more destructive starting with World War I. Before central banking, wars had hard limits. They ended when the money ran out. But now, with fiat credit on tap, governments could wage war indefinitely. No accountability, no restraint, just the printing press fueling the fire. It laid the foundation for the modern military-industrial complex, a permanent wartime economy backed by permanent monetary expansion. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all financed through the silent theft of inflation. And all made possible because central banks removed the natural limits on state violence. This is the core danger of fiat money. It severs spending from accountability, and it finances destruction in secret. But Bitcoin flips the script.
Okay, so there we're in agreement until he gets to the end that it is the fault of fiat money. It is the fault of the people who control the fiat money and make the policies. Again, him jumping in that Bitcoin is the solution. I'm like, no, because you still got a bunch of schmucks running your system. You're not changing those little brothers that are involved, the Warburgs, whatever their names may be. You can, as I say, you can change the names, you can change the nationalities, the religion, skin color, whatever, but the mentality stays the same until you change that mentality and the morals of the people within the system. I'm just like, you guys, you're just gonna create the same bullshit once again.
Script. It's not just sound money, it's peaceful money. Because when money can't be printed, wars become harder to fund. A state that must tax its citizens for every missile.
How did they say money can't be printed? Okay, it's not, you're not walking around with a coin or a dollar bill, but you're still walking around with a machine that's got that dollar in there. I mean, we're just going to talk for the, call it a dollar. It could be a euro, whatever. You still got the machine in there. And what's behind that? And what's to say tomorrow, oh no, oh, they went bankrupt. They're gone. All my money's gone.
Launched is a state that thinks twice. Bitcoin is rooted in truth, in rules, not rulers, in scarcity, not
in truth, in rules, not rulers. I mean, is it just it's not owned by anybody? It's just, that even makes me more scared that it's some internet god in the sky that's holding on to this thing, that like some, like AI robot. That's even scarier.
not war, and in voluntary cooperation, not force. So this is the reality of our fiat world. Money is created from debt. Asset prices are manipulated by credit, and central banks are built to fund war. And most people have no idea, but now you do. And hopefully you can see that there's finally a way out. Bitcoin isn't just a better investment. It's a better system. It's transparent, incorruptible, and peaceful by design. It's the clearest exit from a corrupt...
Yeah, that I don't agree with it. And also, okay, let's start doing some deep dives. I'll start looking into this. Because, I mean, I know the Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies, we've already got a problem with money laundering and trafficking and all sorts of stuff that's going on with that stuff. And I don't see how it's not going to be used in the same way to finance wars. There's absolutely no argument here. Nobody has ever been able to give me any kind of explanation that makes any kind of sense, except this type of double talk that's going to, how shall I say it, resolve these questions and concerns about how is Bitcoin better than your fiat money in terms of, how shall I say it, theoretically in structure. I don't see how this type of structure is any different than what the central banks. It's just another Ponzi scheme.
Credit-fueled war finance system. This is why Bitcoiners always say, fix the money, fix the world. Now, will Bitcoin fix everything?
Yeah, fix the money, fix the world. For me, it's like, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to basics. Let's go back to the gold standard. As I say, you're going to have, when you go back to trading, if somebody says, yeah, but silver is valuable. Yes, okay. So, but you're going back to some sort of tangible resources that your country has. And I even, for a long time, I was like, okay, I can understand your GDP, because your value of a country is not just the gold reserves that it holds. And I mean, you can go and, okay, argue copper mine, your different silver mines. It's not just the valuable metals that your country, or say diamonds, because diamonds also it's not just put on jewelry. It is something that is very necessary. It's a very, very hard substance, and it is something that has been used in our technology and does have a very important, so all of these things that are important in our infrastructures and in our arts and sciences. I mean, the stuff that we use in our commodities. So anyway, I'm getting off track there. But what I'm saying is, with the GDP, I was like, okay, I can see how, yeah, we're producing, you're producing jobs, you're producing food, you're producing stuff. But this is where, when I saw this article, and I keep on going back to them, I was like, you're right. So this is how homemakers help the economy. And basically what they're arguing is this Andrew Miller, what he's arguing, stay-at-home moms have economists worried. Okay, that, where is Janet Yellen? Okay, in May, during a speech at Brown University in Rhode Island, Janet Yellen, she was the head of the Federal Reserve, said that America is falling behind the advanced economies of Europe. Falling behind. Oh, and off a cliff. Partially due to America's low rate of female labor force participation. I mean, Europe is more advanced in a socialist bullshit. And we gotta follow. No. Okay. She cited a 2012 study by the global strategy consulting firm Strategy and, which makes a compelling case that GDP would indeed rise 5% if female employment were boosted to male levels. But this study makes no attempt to measure the economic value of work already being done by women Yellen wants to pull into the official workforce. The equations that economists use to calculate GDP exclude the work that mothers do at home as non-market labor. Late economist Paul Samuelson joked that GDP falls when a man marries his housekeeper. Since she is now supported by her husband rather than by an employer recognized by the Internal Revenue Service, her official contribution to the economy is now erased, even if she continues to do the same work. And he was right. Of course, homemaking is much more involved in sophisticated art than just housekeeping. Thank you. I wish you would tell that to the divorce lawyers and judges. This makes it difficult to estimate and to labor markets. This makes it difficult to estimate its economic value. One study conducted by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis suggested that GDP would be 26% higher if it accounted for the housework and childcare in private households. Okay, now let's add on to that cooking, event planning, matchmaking, caregiving, being a nurse, dietitian, shopper, going to the grocery store, psychologist for your husband when he's flipping out and needs to calm down, financial manager. The list goes on and on and on. The American Time Use Survey estimates that the average stay-at-home mother performs 18 hours of childcare and 30 hours of housework each week. In reality, the stay-at-home mother is already a full professional in a $4.7 trillion industry. But the government statisticians ignore this sector of the economy. Perhaps we should call it non-market household production to make it sound more official. Now, Yellen and others are demanding that mothers switch off this engine of value creation and go get jobs in offices, office buildings, factories, restaurants, etc. I mean, there was one woman who she was young, a young mother, and she was like, "Wait a second, why? I cut hair for a living. I'm a hairdresser. Why am I going to try and go and get a job to go and cut hair, be a hairdresser, and turn around and have to pay somebody to take care of my kids? Like, it makes no sense. I'm not we're not coming out ahead. If more moms were staying at home, then they wouldn't have to pay. I mean, nowadays it's like the nanny. When I got back to the United States and all of the IMF Family Association, the spouses coming to this country from, and the Europeans were the worst. And they're all saying, "Oh, I got to get a nanny. I got to get a nanny." I'm like looking around going, like, we don't have nannies. That's like Mary Poppins London stuff. We don't have nannies in the United States. And then I found out we did. I was like, oh God, Cornelia Guest, you've really gone to town with your Deb of the Decade bullshit and really made this country so elitist, like Wallace Simpson, CZ Guest. For anybody who doesn't know, Wallace Simpson is this is the King of England who abdicated for the gold digging American divorcee, Wallace Simpson, who is the godmother of Cornelia Guest. She had her hand in the whole destruction of this country. According to a report by the McKinsey Global Institute, women contribute 6.9 trillion to official US GDP in 2014 compared to 10.3 trillion from the men. The implication was that women account for only 40% of the country's productivity. And, the thing is somebody doesn't actually pay you for what you're doing, it's of no value. Even having sex with them, everybody's a prostitute. But women also do about 2/3 of the non-market household production in America. So the real contribution to the labor market is closer to 9.7 trillion compared to 11.7 trillion contributed by men. Everything is turned into a number or a statistic. So yeah, back to basics. And I mean, when we were living abroad, here, okay, granted, we had the school education for the kids paid for, but I'm all for, good public schools that stop with the private schools. I'm not saying shut down all of your private schools, except I want to see all the prep schools along with the Ivy League colleges. Oh, Harvard, you're up there with Larry Summers. Oh, all the little IMF ladies. In court, and that's got to stop. But so I'm not like get rid of all of the private schools. No. But when I heard about charter schools as well, I was like, what the frick are you people doing? That this is ridiculous. Oh, if we have it a private school, I mean, I was even the worst place I lived in the past 19 years or 18 years since I've been back in DC. Oh my God, it was horrible. So it was a 2-bedroom apartment with Latino family of 4. All 4 of them are living in the other bedroom. I'm in, and it's tiny. The place is disgusting. I mean, that kitchen was absolutely disgusting. This is neglect. The mom was constantly screaming at the kids. the poor, you could tell the eldest, he was like 7 or 8. I mean, my heart went out to that boy. He already had really bad anger management problems, but the problem wasn't him, it was his mother. Uh, Screaming. And yet they had him in a charter school, and he said, yeah, it's so I like have more opportunities in life. I was like, oh my God, my God. Yeah, and they lived here. They had a huge car. Oh, what the frick do you need a car for in DC? And you're living like this, and you're renting out this room to me in this tiny 2-bedroom apartment, and there's 5 of us living in here, and you're driving around in a SUV, and you're sending your kids to charter schools so they have more opportunities in this world. Treat your kids better. Stop spending all of this stupid money on a goddamn car you don't need. I mean, you live in DC, you don't actually need it. Unless you got some business. They didn't have any business. They both worked, minimum wage, whatever. Absolutely ludicrous. And I mean, I stayed there longer. That's when I ended up in DC landlord tenant courts. And I was like, what the? I mean, my landlord came after me, and I was like, oh, bitch. But at least I got the evidence that I needed against DC landlord tenant court. Okay. It was crazy. I was like, is this really, you need to take on another fight? But I got the evidence that I needed, and I ended up at this shithole, whatever. But I mean, what the, what the fuck are you people doing? Really? This is crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I don't swear a lot, but really. This has got to stop, top to bottom. I mean, the war has got to stop. Congress, 2000. This is Gonzalez Linehan versus USA, 2011 Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. The American government said that it didn't have control of its courts at the local and state level. Well, you renounced your raison d'etre. You admitted that you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Congress, dissolve yourself. I mean, we're going down. We're all going down real bad. Crazy. Okay. So I hope that kind of answered the question that came up. And oh God, poor Teresa. Yes. Teresa, A Better Life with Teresa Bruce. Um, let's build a better life. One bold choice, one honest conversation, one unexpected movie scene at a time. Oh Lord, I keep on telling all of the guys from the IMF and the World Bank and the Fed upstairs, I'm like, you guys, this is better than Dynasty and Dallas put together. They just put their head down and walk away in shame. Yeah, it's not funny. So anyway, Riane Eisler. Now, Riane Eisler, she was a Holocaust survivor, and she has the power of partnerships. She has lots and lots of books about the power of partnerships. And yeah. But again, she's got how many books and counting? Riane Eisler, an Austrian-born American system scientist, future attorney, and author who writes the effect of gender and family politics histories on societies and stuff. But she talks about the real wealth of nations. That's again the same thing as he was talking about in that article of recognizing the contributions of homemakers, um, as you know, legitimate work. And this has been the feminist. Before the feminists came to advance women's rights and liberate us all, people actually respected the work that women did in families, homes, and communities. Go figure. So that's the explanation for today. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.